The AEW show from Wednesday night, December 15th, with the long-awaited championship match with Page and Danielson. And I got to admit, starting off at the top, I'm like, what are they going to do here? I didn't think that anybody could do an hour with Adam Page at this point in his career and at this point in the wrestling business like that, and it would be good. And son of a gun, they did it. And because we had talked about, is it too early to put the belt on Danielson? Well, obviously, because Page just won it, it would bury him. But at the same time, Danielson didn't need to be doing no jobs, as Ernie Ladd might have said one time. And they don't do DQs because there are no rules in this fucking company except the ones that the individual wrestlers having the match impose on themselves. So, but no, it's true, right?
It's true. No, it is true. It is true.
So...
Funny.
I was wondering, what the fuck are they going to do? They did it. It was perfect. And it was obviously this was a Bryan Danielson production. I'm sure that Adam Page had every bit of input in the world, and they sat down and talked about it. And Danielson was receptive and easy to work with, but he was the director of this major motion picture. And I can't see how anybody could argue with that when you take a guy with 20 years experience wrestling all over the world against every major talent in every major style, or young Adam Page, fiery babyface, who was in Ring of Honor and the Independents 3 years ago. So Bryan Danielson ran this, but as a result, it was the best match that Adam Page has ever had, by far. Because it takes two, and you got to have a leader in the dance routine. I like that they started out with it because even though a lot of people will say it was true, nobody else could follow it on the show and the crowd was worn out. At least this way they could go. If they had started at 9:00, people would have gone, oh, they're going an hour right off the bat, right? It would have been kind of a tell. You didn't really know for sure until they passed the 30 or 35 minute mark. And then you're like, oh, okay, I think I see what they're doing.
Yeah, there were really only two options. You could start the show with it, or you could do what Watts used to do and start with one or two matches and then have that and announce throughout the whole show. We have standby matches. But, they've never really done that, so you'd have to establish that as a regular thing, which they could do. But other than that, you had to start the show with it.
But anyway, as you mentioned earlier in the program, the Cult of Meat with Extra Cheese sign guy in the Cornette face shirt was on one corner, and the Cornette is out of touch sign guy was on the other corner. And I kept thinking by the time the fucking match is over with, they got to be on each other in the crowd, but they stayed calm. I mean, we'll go through a little bit of the match. It was a 60-minute match, so we're not going to recap everything, but just this was wrestling. And now you see Bryan Danielson, he was forced to retire because of concussions, but yet he can put together and execute something like this. I'm not even talking about athletically. I'm talking about mentally, the brain power. So that now we know why he wanted to come back to wrestling and why he felt that he could wrestle. This guy don't have brain damage that's going to hinder him from doing anything as long as he's careful in the ring. But he's a smart-ass heel, like you said, the World of Sport heel, where he's a technical wrestler, but at the same time, he's a little prick, a bell-end, a wanker, if you will. He does the little things to get heat. He's smirky. He leans out for the rope breaks, but not even rushing like I'm scared, but I'm a smart-ass, and I'm just going to get you away from me. Doing the jumping jacks, mocking Page, controlling the pace of the match. Paul Turner, the referee, actually got a chance to referee. I haven't seen Paul Turner used to work for us in Ring of Honor. I like the guy. He's a great guy, a great referee. He's not been a referee for the last 2 years because nobody pays any attention to the referees because, as I mentioned, everybody makes up their own rules. So it was unusual in AEW. You would see this was a sporting contest, a contest for a championship with a legitimate official in there. Imagine that. I wish JR could have been there to call this one. I think it would have brought the old JR out. And for the first longest part of the match, which was smart, every time Page would start to open up, Danielson would give him a little something and then ground him. And that way it's saved by the end of the match. Danielson had not had most of the shit kicked out of him still, and that's why there was a place to go. Page sold well through this whole thing. Everything looked good. Nothing was rushed. This was different than almost every AEW match, which was a positive thing here. Everything made sense. Everything meant something. They gave time for it to register. Again, Danielson kept shutting Page down because he knew they were going long. And I mean, that's Twinkle Toes' specialty, is to do everything he fucking knows in the first 15 minutes of a 35-minute match, so you can't wait for it to be over with. This went 30 minutes, and I wasn't even remotely tired of watching it. They went to the first break at 20 minutes in. It seemed like the first 5 or 10 minutes. Page, it looked like he had time to sell, so it looked like shit was having an effect on him. And you could say, and Page really, he was a wrestler here rather than a spot guy. And the two things that they did that I will find fault with, and otherwise what was tremendous, was Page did that blind moonsault off the top rope again. I say the blind moonsault because he turns his back on his opponent, climbs up, and just flips. And you could see by the camera angle when he's coming down, Bryan Danielson obviously, instead of just stepping to the side, reaches up and catches him. And in all the other matches, that wouldn't be a big deal because they're all fucking horseshit anyway, and you can tell. But with what they were doing here, that there was no obvious buzz killers and see-throughs, that's the kind of thing. They didn't need to do it. Page doesn't need to do that fucking thing every match, and sooner or later, it's going to bite him in the ass. And the only other thing, it was later on in the match, but same principle, is these guys cannot do superplexes or anything off the top rope by standing on the second rope. They have to get both feet of both guys on the top rope. And that's another buzzkill, because that requires obvious visual cooperation just in terms of not trying to get away. And nobody can keep their balance when they're both on the top rope, except if the other guy's helping. Just the second rope makes all the difference, because if anybody's never been in a ring, if you get your feet on the second rope and you brace your knees on that top rope and you've got your stance, you can fucking pick people up and do shit and not fall over. But on the top rope, no, you're helping each other and it's obvious. Anyway, that's my soapbox. However, by 30 minutes in, Page was getting a little bit more before he'd get shut back down. And, you know, it was still building. They still had room to run. Then at one point after, it was right before the second break, Page went for another moonsault off onto Danielson on the floor, but this time Danielson shoved him off and he bumped off the apron. Jesus Christ, which that's trusting your own eyesight. He did a front flip off the top rope and landed back first on that apron that's 1.5 feet wide. And then Danielson posted him a few times and went in and healed the crowd while Page got some color. And now we're halfway in, just going for the second break. And did you see the spot when they came back? Danielson runs down the apron of the ring and jumps off and gives the knee to Page as he's standing on the floor.
Yeah.
And then got on top of him and punched him in the head because Page was bleeding. Anybody wants to know what I'm talking about when I've been screaming about why are all these guys throwing these phony punches and why are all these fucking idiots covering up so you can't hit them anyway? It looks like shit. This is what it's supposed to look like. Page didn't cover his head up because it's bleeding and Danielson's trying to punch him in the cut, and Danielson's punches were going straight to his fucking forehead. That's the way you do it. And then Danielson starts getting more vicious in the heat. He's wrapping Page's arm around the post. He's working on the cut. He does the head punches, the 10 punches in the corner. He only gave him 9, as I recall, because he didn't want to make the people happy. And the punches to the head in the corner looked good. I refer you from that spot then to later on in this show when Dante Martin was punching in the vicinity of MJF's head. Fuck. So Page is selling like a champ. And fucking Danielson's a heel. And this thing is building still at 40 minutes in. It's still building. This is what Kenny Omega is incapable of. An athletic contest with professional wrestling and not phony video game bullshit and a lack of logic. That's why he's not the best wrestler in the world, never will be, never has been. And that's why guys like Danielson have a fucking claim to being in that conversation. He's doing what Twinkle Toes has been there for 2 years and not been able to do. Danielson goes for a kick to Page on the apron. Page ducks it, and Danielson kicks the post, and Page is back in control. And now we go to another break. We're 40 minutes in. And here's a comparison that Ric Flair might not agree with, but I compared Flair and Steamboat in 1989 to, it was a match, it was as far as you could go in wrestling to be entertaining while still keeping the believability of an athletic contest. That was the state of the art at that time. And then later on, when I saw Tyler Black and Davey Richards in Toronto and they had that magic night, I said, okay, this is a little bit updated. It's still an athletic contest and a struggle, but it's entertaining. This is the kind of thing that it's about as far as you can go. If they'd gone any farther with the entertainment, it would have taken you out of the match as an athletic contest, but they still managed to retain the spirit of they were fighting over something. So I compare this to the flavor of Flair and Steamboat. Page hit a tombstone, got a big pop on a 2 count, and then they rolled over and started selling so the people could chant, "This is awesome." You notice the people never chant, "This is awesome" in the middle of the action. That's like they don't clap at a tennis match when people are still hitting the ball back and forth. They wait till somebody misses. So if you're constantly in motion, you're running off and leaving your fucking crowd. And they fought on the top buckle again, but finally big belly to back off the top. Danielson's still all over Page. Page's juice dried up. He should have committed a little bit more, possibly. It would have added here, but nevertheless, it's all right. By the way, when we were talking about Slow Devin and his spike stabbing the other day, I mentioned the way to blade yourself, not like what that poor referee did by trying to go from coast to coast from one side of your head to the other and only scratching it like a fingernail. The idea is you make your blade, stick it in, and drag it about a half an inch or an inch, commit, boom, and you're done. Some idiot thought that I said stick the blade in about a half an inch or an inch. He said, well, Cornette's crazy. Well, your skull. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. Stick it in your skin and pull it about a half an inch or an inch across. Dumb shit. Anyway, so then Page finally, he hit that dead eye on the apron, and it was, Danielson's had the concussion issues. This was safe. Safe as far as his head hitting, safe as far as just the margin of error on the apron. Still, I don't know why they do that stuff. But then Page went for just a leap, not even a dive, but just came up to the top and went to jump off, maybe for a double sledge or whatever, off the top to the floor on Danielson, and Danielson sidestepped him, and Page went face first through the table, and that looked great. And they go to the break there because everybody's down. When they come back, Page is still fighting from underneath, but now both guys are showing the effects. And Danielson goes for another top rope belly to back, but Page landed on his feet and clotheslined Danielson a fucking flip, and they go into the 1-2 forearm exchange, but it wasn't the stupid, I'll let you hit me and then you let me hit you. And it wasn't the little flipper forearms that nobody sold. They were staggering back and forth across the ring with each blow. And at this point, and tell me if you heard this, Taz referred to Justin Roberts calling 5 minutes remaining in the match on the PA system. I never heard it. Did they not have the PA piped through to program audio?
This has happened almost every single time they've done this. And they did this, in fact, previously during the Omega Danielson 30-minute time limit draw. They do, in fact, announce it to the building, but it doesn't come through. The only way you would know it, actually, is if you listen and hear the crowd all of a sudden get quiet to hear what's being said.
So, and then the announcers referred to it, but the 5-minute call was the first one that we'd heard. There 5 minutes left, so they went 55 minutes not calling any time. And then they wonder why, why the people live, I heard a lot of people saying this, arguing on Twitter and on the internet. Well, did they screw the fans by giving them a draw and a title match? You fucking morons. It's been so long since this shit was done right that the fans don't even know what the fuck's going on. For one thing, it's free TV, and for another thing, a draw in a world championship match, fucking the fans. Well, if they had never fucked the fans before, we wouldn't have drawn very much money for 100 years. But the reason why the fans live were mad, one of them is because they watched this thing go on so long and then suddenly 5 minutes left. If you make the 5-minute calls, they're in the moment and they're apprised of what's going on, and it builds the tension. Like the wrestlers were building the tension in the ring. The 5 minutes gone, 55 minutes remaining, and then 10 minutes gone, and 15 and 20, and the clock is ticking. It adds to the tension. But when you just tell the fans in the building, there's 5 minutes left, and then ding, yeah, they're going to be pissed. And also, there's 5,000 people in the building. There's 1 million watching on television. And yes, they've been talking about how they've been going past 30 minutes and past 40 minutes. But they could have had a clock ready. Or they could have piped the ring announcer audio into the program mix so that the fans at home would have been kept apprised. They're so scared of time limit draws, like these weren't done regularly all through the history of wrestling. Anyway, so Paige hits a surprise deadeye out of nowhere. It gets a big pop on a 2 count, but there were no overdone finishers. There were no preposterous moves. Everybody sold the effects of everything. And then finally now Paige is really coming on in the last few minutes. This is what the people been waiting for. And he even did Danielson's stomp spot where he grabs the wrists and stomps the face, and not as good as Danielson, but he doesn't have as much practice. And then he goes for the buckshot, but Danielson gets the label lock. But Paige escapes and hits a clothesline that turns Danielson inside out and is ready for the buckshot and flips in and hits the buckshot lariat. And as soon as they went down, the bell rang and the people started booing, but they didn't have the bell mic'd either. You could barely hear it. So the announcers had to say, oh, the time's expired. And why did they hit the bell on the buckshot lariat instead of the cover after the buckshot lariat? Has anybody ever watched wrestling before? You don't fucking ring the bell when the babyface just hammered the fucking guy. You wait for the babyface to crawl over as quick as he can and try to capitalize, and as soon as he hooks the leg, one, ding, 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 ding. So they need to work on their ambient sound, miking the bell, bringing the announcer into the ring announcer into the fucking program mix, and learn how to complement the incredible work that the talent in the ring, Adam Page and Bryan Danielson, did by giving them their atmosphere for the hour Broadway. Shivani's seen them. Probably nobody else in the building has. But they could do some research. But what a fucking match. That's the best AEW heavyweight championship match they've ever had, right?
I think
Can we think of another one?
I thought it was tremendous. I think Bryan Danielson right now is one of the most enjoyable wrestlers to watch of anyone in recent memory. And I was one of those people that for a long time thought, oh, if only AEW had CM Punk and Bryan Danielson, that would be a big match they could do. And it would be great to see them in that forum where they're not handcuffed by Vince McMahon. And both guys have gone in different ways than I thought they would. And both guys have been great. And it's just so enjoyable and everything's fresh. This match was great. World of Sport style. I mean, that's what it is. You go watch an old World of Sport match where they're doing stuff and everyone's paying attention. Everyone's into the match. Everyone knows what's going on. He is so good right now. Really love this match. Not to take anything away from Page, but to me, this felt like the Bryan Danielson show more than anything else.
Well, and he's trying to prove a point. I'm sure he read Flair's comments, but also this is what he came to the company to do, to be the best wrestler in the world, to prove a point, to do what he enjoys after he was kept down, then forced to retire, and blah, 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 and all that shit he went through.
And now you have an interesting storyline, because Bryan Danielson has not been able to defeat the AEW champion, but on 2 different occasions, the AEW champion, Omega and now Page, have been unable to beat Bryan Danielson.
It's almost like Sam Muchnick's behind this, because it's so old, it's new. It's so simple, it's intricate. It's so easy, it's complicated. This is wrestling. And again, the best match that Adam Page has ever had. And after every time I see what this kid can do, I'm pissed off that I haven't got to see it before. He came out and did that great interview where he sounded like a top babyface, had some balls. Only 2 years into the television program. He has this, after all the rotten tag team matches that we had to watch him in with Harpo as his partner and the stinky multi-man gimmick matches, he was in one of those football field fuckery things. After the Dork Order bullshit where we had to see him palling around with job guys and riding them around on his lawnmower, finally, he can do this. Who could have known? But, and that's why, if Page, I know they didn't have Danielson for him to work with, but if Page had been concentrated on as a single from the start, allowed to talk and wrestle singles matches against some kind of experienced opponents, imagine how much farther along he'd be right now instead of working with all this indie-rific mud show horse shit.
And I want to say also, this is exactly the kind of wrestling I want. Sports-based wrestling, where it's not too sports-based, so there's no charisma or personality, but this right here, and I've said it before, the best stuff in AEW is the best stuff in wrestling in years, and the worst stuff is unwatchable garbage. And the biggest problem with AEW in my eyes is you follow up perfection like this with the next I couldn't believe they followed the match with that promo, and it immediately turned me off to the show. But let's get your thoughts.
Well, wait a minute. Oh, shit. I forgot. That was the one where the Hardley Boys and Adam Cole were talking, right?
And Bobby Fish.
And Bobby, yeah, I skipped that.
And it was Christmas music in the background. And
was there? I didn't even see any. I just saw their faces. I said, fuck it. It's just a pre-tape. I'm not going to ruin my mood. How bad was it?
It was all their usual comedy. And, I'm sure to them it was funny. And to me, it was, how do you follow Again, AEW has segments and matches and guys that are serious and great, and it's Mid-South Wrestling 2022. And then there's this, which is fucking Kai and Tai 2022. It's not good, it's bad comedy, and it takes me out of the show when you follow a serious tone with the complete opposite.
And you know what... watching the Hardleys or Cutlet or all of their stooge crew, and now, unfortunately, poor Adam Cole, who's, I guess, irredeemable at this point. It's like people that show you pictures of their ugly children. They think they're beautiful, but nobody else wants to look at them. That's what their promos are like. They think they're hilarious, but nobody else wants to see that shit. Because they've fucking puked on themselves, they've shit their pants, and they got snot hanging out of their nose. But I'll tell you what we need with wrestling, like you said, sports-based presentation. That's what we were promised. That's what we got with Danielson and Page. Brian, there was some meat to that, something you could take a bite of, you could chew on. Something with substance, something with taste, something that you would crave. There was meat to Page and Danielson. And all the other guys is just bones and cartilage. And that's something you're never going to get with our friends at Omaha Steaks. Folks,
Amazing.
It's the holidays.
What an amazing transition.
It's the holidays. And I'll tell you what, you may be wondering what to get people. Well, there's one thing that's a universally common amongst all the peoples in the world. All the little chillins in the world has to eat at one point or another. Some of us eat more than others, but all of us have to do it sometime. And that's why Omaha steaks are the perfect holiday gift, because they're not going to return it. It's not going to be the wrong size. It's not going to be the wrong color. And they're going to eat it, especially if they get hungry enough. So, folks, right now, if you go to omahasteaks.com and enter JCE into the search bar for the perfect gift package, guess what you're going to get? 4 bacon-wrapped filet mignons, 4 boneless chicken breasts, 4 Omaha Steaks burgers, 4 gourmet jumbo franks, 4 individual scalloped potatoes, 4 caramel apple tartlets, 1 jar of signature steak seasoning. And if you go to omahasteaks.com and use the keyword JCE in the search bar, 8 more free Omaha Steaks burgers, all in this giant package, and all for only $99.99. You can save over 50% on this package, regular price, and get 8 free burgers on top of that. omahasteaks.com, keyword JCE in the search bar. Holy mackerel, your lips will smack your brains out, and everyone will thank you because you will contribute to their holiday weight gain.